Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in our book chat tonight. My name is Melody McAllister. I want to thank Alice Keeler for letting me use her platform to do this. I'm so excited to be here tonight with my good friend now, because we're good friends now. I've read her book, so automatically we're really good friends. But with an edu-matched author just like me, Miss Dr. Heather Lyon. Dr. Heather Lyon, how are you doing tonight?
I am so excited to be here. So I've been looking forward to this all day.
I'm so glad because I know we're 4 hours apart and you've had a very, very long day. So I want to tell you that I appreciate you so much for joining me tonight. And I really enjoyed your book and I can't wait to get into it. But can you tell us a little bit about your background in education and like why you decided to write Engagement is Not a Unicorn, which is I didn't have a narwhal. I didn't have a narwhal headband or I would have worn that. But tell us about your book a little, just a synopsis.
So I'll start with a little bit about me. So about me is I am an educator, a blogger, a mom, a wife, sister, friend, daughter. Like all of those hats are hats that I wear. I'm not always great at balancing those very well yet, but I'm working on it. In fact, I don't think I've seen my children tonight. I'm missing, a game or whatever. That's not because of you. That's because I'm also a teacher. I taught before this. So, but I love it so much. So anyway, about the book. So I have been in education for over 20 years now. And when I started to do some staff development professionally and then administration, there was a lot of conversation about engagement and I was going into classrooms and I was being armed with checklists, with these rubrics that would say I should be looking for these things. And then I started to get some training specifically on talking about engagement. And so the person who I was getting trained by, her name is Dr. Paula Bevan, and she used to talk about engagement should be brain sweat. Like kids' brains should be sweating because they're doing so much work. And it reminds me of Robin R. Jackson's book, Never Work Harder Than Your Students. These checklists weren't looking for brain sweat. And so
Right.
I was going into classrooms and I thought, this isn't it. So I started to do some thinking, and actually I went to another school where they had a poster in the bathroom of Philip Schlechty's 5 Levels of Engagement. And so I was like, oh, I feel that, I can sense that, but I don't think that's quite right. And then one thing leads to another. I started talking about what I was thinking about. People were like, what book is that from? And I'm like, no, it's from me. And they're like, you should write a book. And I thought, I've always wanted to write a book, but I didn't know what I was going to write a book on. And so anyway, that turned into this.
Yes, I'm so glad that you did. I loved it. I feel like some of the strengths that you have is just you're really non-judgmental and you're very realistic. Like I think sometimes, like I'm a teacher, you're an admin. You've gone through the ranks, but I don't feel like you're coming from a place where you're talking down to anybody. Like this is a message for classroom teachers. This is a message for instructional coaches. This is a message for admin. And I love that about you. And I love also there's no judgment. There's no judgment. I feel like you were being so honest about everything that you've gone through. And it's funny, we talked a little bit before about this, but your honesty that you put in here, it made me feel like, it just made me feel validated as a teacher to, and I love that about it. I just want to say that those are your strengths. And tell us a little bit more about your invention, the engagement continuum matrix, which is like the cornerstone of the book.
Yes. So again, Philip Schlechty's work, he talks about 5 levels of engagement. And as I was looking and thinking about that, I felt like it was close, but it didn't exactly resonate entirely with me. And so the more I thought about it, the more I thought, oh, there are really 4 levels of engagement. And so that's the engagement continuum. So the continuum is really from the lowest level of engagement, which is non-compliance, then it bumps up to compliance, then interested, then absorbed. So I felt awesome about thinking through that portion of it. But I was like, well, what would cause somebody to go from one place on that continuum to another? And if you know me, you know that I love a 2x2 matrix. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to bend this. And so I bent that continuum pole to pole to come up with that 2x2 matrix, because really there are variables that would cause somebody to shift from one level of engagement to the next. So it depends on the horizontal axis. It's your relationship with the task. Do you like what you're doing? Whoops. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
I forgot. I was typing, so I muted myself. Is it okay if I show it? Your continuum
yeah, please.
matrix? Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I hope I do it good. Can you see it? Because now I can't see myself.
Raise it up a little bit. There you go. And over to the other direction. Other way. Other way. Stop. There you go.
Okay. I love this.
Share my screen.
Oh my God, you can share your screen. Yes, I meant to say that. We just got to talking and I totally forgot to say that. But yes, okay, definitely share your screen. Go ahead.
Okay, give me one moment and I'm actually going to my website, because all of this is really available for free on the website. So all you have to do is go to book and then it says resources. So actually I should be sharing my screen as I'm doing this fancy stuff right now.
It's okay. You have some fans, and I want to thank Rochelle and Michael and Matt for joining in. I've worked alongside Heather Lyon in the classroom, and she leads with a balance of curiosity, confidence, intellect, and directness that is unique and admirable. And I have to say that after reading this book, Matt, I totally agree with you. I would work for you any day, Doctor.
Aww.
All right.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, and I'm going to drop the link to this so other people go ahead and tell us about the engagement continuum / matrix.
Yes, so this is the actual, and again, all of this is free on the website. So you can see this continuum from non-compliant, compliant, interested to absorbed. And then again, I just bent it pole to pole. So in the book, you'll see this. And so if somebody is non-compliant, it means they have a low relationship to the task, but they also have a low relationship to the external person or consequence they get for doing the task. So non-compliant people, basically, it's, I don't care about this thing that I'm supposed to do. I don't care about my relationship with you and what happens to it if I don't do it. And I don't care about consequence, positive or negative, for not doing it. I'm not doing it. Compliant people don't want to do the task any more than a non-compliant person, which is why they're both on the left side here. But a compliant person cares about the relationship or the consequence for doing it. So a compliant person says, I wouldn't do this for anybody else, but Grandma, I'll do this for you. I love you, Grandma, and I don't want to disappoint you. Or a compliant person says, I wouldn't do it for free, non-compliant, but if you pay me $50, I'll do it. Or non-compliant is, I'm not going to do it, but you're now threatening to call my mother. All right, I'll do it. So that's how that shift is made. And what's important about non-compliant and compliant is that compliant people are still disengaged. Everything on the left is disengagement. But in classrooms, we so often settle for compliant. And in fact, what we do is we accept compliant behavior as long as, we'll accept non-compliant learning as long as we get compliant behavior. So just be quiet. Right. I will leave you alone. And that's awful.
It is. And we talked a little bit about this. I'm going to, you have some really, really nice comments. I don't know if you saw them. No. Michael says, I like the matrix as a way to reflect and guide. And Terry says, I think it is amazing to have an administrator write about teaching strategies. I can't wait to read this book. Are you and Terry friends?
No, I don't know Terry.
Oh my God. Thanks for joining in. This is so cool. And something that I loved about your continuum and matrix is just how it seems like it's very simplified, but when you were talking about compliance, unfortunately, what we were both talking about, like in school, that is basically in college for teachers. I mean, that's kind of how what we were kind of geared towards. Like, I didn't have a book like this. I wish that I had. I wish that I would have had this during my student teaching or my first or second year of actual teaching, because it puts things in the proper place. And it's like I probably learned some of this like 5 or 6 years into teaching, like learning the hard way, going through so many challenges that I'm sure that even you felt. Like when you think about your past classroom experiences, do you feel like you wish you would have had something like this a lot sooner? Or what do you think about?
Yeah, I think about how often I accepted compliance as engagement. And I think about how little choice and I gave my students in their learning, even though there was so much opportunity to provide that. Teachers get so connected to the task singular that they have invested their time in designing, that we forget that that singular task is just one way to demonstrate the learning of the standard or whatever the outcome is. And that it really costs us nothing to offer choice and voice, and that immediately triggers higher levels of engagement. That's the easiest way to go from, people always ask me, how do I go from compliant to interested? The easiest way to do it is to offer choice and voice. So briefly, voice is if I said, hey, Melody, where do you want to go for dinner tonight? You can choose whatever restaurant you want.
Red Lobster.
So your voice allows that decision to happen. When we get to that restaurant, there are only certain items on that menu that you can order. You can't go to Red Lobster and order filet mignon. They don't offer it. But right. You had voice into that decision, and then you get choice. And the easiest choice to offer is, tell me an assignment or task that you would like to propose one to me that will fulfill this outcome. And that also shifts a teacher's thinking into, what is my outcome? It makes it very conscious.
Well, all I really want is shrimp scampi and cheddar bay biscuits, but that's all I'm asking for. But
well, that's on the menu, so you will be happy. But the other thing that I want to say about that matrix is that I think as teachers, we are wired to feel like we need to get, if there's 4 places on this continuum and the highest level is absorption, that's where I should aim. The thing is that absorption is, it is intrinsically motivated. I love to do this task. And you have to actually interrupt me and tell me to stop. Because when I am absorbed, it's really premised in like Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's work on flow. And if anybody can pronounce his name better than I can, have at it.
But I'm not going to try.
Right. So, but his work on flow, it's this notion that we get lost in the enjoyment of doing something challenging. And so that is not the place that you aim for every student in every classroom every day, because as human beings, we're not wired for that. We're wired, though, to get to be interested, though. And so, in fact, like, that is how we learn how to walk and talk. And we don't grade kids on that, and we celebrate approximation. So like, you're a mom of 4, right?
5.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm a mom of 3. When my kids started to talk and all they got out was meh, maybe not mama, I was celebrating. I am calling people up. I am, really reinforcing that behavior. When they take one step, we're like, posting that on every social media outlet we have and wondering why we're not, having somebody knock on our door to see this achievement. But in schools, we shut it right down. Approximation is not good enough. We grade the first try and then wonder why we shut people down, or why they start to shift from intrinsic motivation to extrinsic.
Yes, I love everything that you're saying is speaking to me. And Matt says the setup of the matrix reminds us that engagement is not linear. A student doesn't move through all stages. You don't need to move to compliant to eventually get to absorbed. And you're right. But if you do have a non-compliant student, like, you have a lot of strategies in there to help them get to compliant, because there's sometimes it can be linear. It just depends on the student. And you talk a lot about that and knowing your students. Michael says the correct answer is that we go to dinner at Sarah's. Julia says this book is so important, especially now with pandemic learning. Yes. Getting past non-compliance this year took tons of creativity and choice. And now I want to ask you this, and we didn't prepare for this, but your book came out like during the pandemic, and I'm sure that you did not write this like knowing that a pandemic was coming out, but actually it fits even better, I think, because like everything's been blown up the way that we're supposed to learn. It's all been blown to bits. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, as an author writing, and then all of a sudden this pandemic comes, and as an educator too, do you have any thoughts about that you'd like to share?
Yeah, this is not going to be the book if you're looking for, how to do virtual learning explicitly. This is not a book that is explicitly touching on those pieces of things. This is universal. And it's also universal regardless of if you're an educator, because that matrix and the continuum are not just about kids in classrooms. It's all people everywhere. But again, these leverage points, the book is really divided into 3 sections, more or less. It's what, so what, and now what. So the what chapters explain the 4 levels of engagement. The so what chapters describe why it matters, why non-compliance matters, and understanding it matters. And then the 3rd section, the now what, gives you strategies of if you are working with somebody who is non-compliant, how do you help them go from non-compliant to compliant? If you have someone who's compliant that you're with, or maybe it's you, and that's the other thing too, which comes up in the so what section. Like, a lot of teachers, a lot of people these days have lost their sense of drive or motivation because of these situations that are taking place in the world that are out of our control. And so, oh my goodness, my coworkers here are, you're hearing a lot of non-compliant behavior with my husband and my kids. So by any means,
as a mother of 5, I have no judgment.
Is your 5th one your husband or a child? Because sometimes
it's really
don't answer that. So anyway, my point here is that when we behave in compliant manners, let's not be surprised when those who we interact with and those who we touch aren't feeling motivated and inspired either.
Right. And we talk a lot about compliance, but you're trying to help teachers get through from compliance to interested, because
yes.
the unicorn we feel like that absorption, and you talk a lot about how like you just get lost in the learning, and you even ask, like, I love this book, and I want to say that I absolutely love the size of this. I feel like it is a textbook and a workbook in itself. And so it's just something good to keep around forever. And I have written in it. Now, I was non-compliant in writing where I was supposed to write. I wrote wherever I wanted to write, but
I love it. That's your choice and voice.
Yes, but it's so interesting how you give examples I mean, I can't give the whole book away, but you use real life examples and you use present day examples about the human nature. And like you said, it's not just for teachers and students. This is something that like instructional coaches could think about and do a study on to help teachers. This is something that admin should be doing together. Like it's just a phenomenal way to help people understand how to get others motivated. Because yes, we have all of these lists and checklists and standards and curriculum and all these things to go through. But how do we get it? And you even talk about this, like you talk about the actual limitations that we have that are realistic. And that's what I love about it, because you're not like some pie in the sky, like, oh, this sounds really wonderful, but I can't do this. No. And you give, and if you say, if you can't do this, like we talk about homework, if homework is supposed to happen in your district, or if it's against policy in your district, like you give options like that. So that's what I love about this book. It really is for everybody in education. And you even say parents, and we talk about advocacy in here. There's just so much. I feel like, and I don't want to keep talking, but I just want you to know how much I love this book, number one.
Oh.
And number two, I feel like this should be like a 2 or 3 parter, because there's so much.
I'll come back. I'll come back. But okay. So a couple things. First of all is that
wait, stop. Did you see this?
Yes, I saw.
Honestly, I love this book as a teacher, but really enjoyed as a parent too. Oh my gosh, Laura, I'm with you.
Yeah,
yes.
Right. So that's because I am a mom. I can't separate that from, how I think. So I think like one of the examples that you might be talking about in the book is like the bribery that I tried with my children to get them ready in the morning. And I am not above that bribery, especially because I do understand the matrix. And so the reality is that my kids, particularly when they were young, they were not going to be intrinsically motivated for me to help me get to work on time. They couldn't conceptualize that, but I could entice them by, offering them a donut. So,
or $1.
Or $1. It was $1 a donut. And so that is detailed pretty thoroughly in here. It almost didn't make it to the book because there was a point where when I was writing the book, it got to be quite long. And so I was trying to think about, what to take out versus leave in. But it just was such a great example of how consequences work that come from my personal life.
And also that it's all a part of it. Like you talk about how we make extrinsic motivation like it's some evil thing, but you and we both have intrinsic and extrinsic. Like it's all there. It's realistic. So Matthew says, always felt like the unscripted parts of my class wasn't important. Heather's book made me realize that I was moving toward interested and absorbed in those moments. Yes, Matthew. And Michael says, it would be a great read for parents. They need to realize that school in 2021 shouldn't look like school in 2011, 2000, or 1991. Listen, I agree, but I think that teachers sometimes need to realize this too. I'm not trying to dog on anybody, but we still have a large population of educators that are trying to teach like they were taught when they were younger, or, they just, I mean, it's all there. We know, weren't. It's all right. She was an English teacher, and I can tell. I'm glad he said that. And good morning from Vietnam. Oh my gosh, good morning to you.
Morning.
Good morning. Yes, I love that there's an English teacher, because when you wrote this, you did it in the way that is the most engaging. Like you wrote it in a way that has maximum engagement, and you even put those steps in there. Like, what are you going to do? Because we've all been to professional development, and then we forget about it. If we don't implement it right away, we're not going to use it. And I love it because I got to read it, and then I got to talk to everybody. And so I'm sharing it with more than 2 people. And honest to God, so when I was reading this, I was sitting with all of 4 out of 5 of my kids. And I was looking, I felt like this was a really good read in the moment that I needed, because I want them to be more curious. I want them to be more independent, get to that absorption level. And I started looking at where each one of them were. I had 3. I had one at complete compliance, one at, that was completely absorbed. It was my kindergartner. And the other ones were, interested. Like we were in those. So it was weird how I was reading it and I was watching it in before my eyes. So, yeah.
I love that.
I said a lot, and I try not to talk too much, because but I'm just saying that it impacted me a lot. Let's go on though. I asked you if you would please pick out a portion to read aloud so that people can kind of hear how you write. And so you're going to talk about, or you're going to read aloud a part called "Work Less."
Yes,
So
it's
everybody
in
listen
the
up.
it's in the chapter of absorbed. So what? And so this is explaining, a little bit about why being absorbed matters. So work less. Here's a great place to pause and say that when we are aiming for absorption, we actually have less to do, at least when we're working directly with students. You read that sentence correctly. I said less to do. That's because we do not create absorption. We empower students to use what they like in order to connect with what they are learning about. You will have a much easier time designing opportunities for students to connect what they are absorbed in to the learning rather than trying to design ways to create absorption. Finding ways to tap into things that students are absorbed in is rigorous because at this level of engagement, other things must already be in place. It means that the teacher and the student have a classroom environment that supports the students as producers, not just consumers of learning. It means that the teacher has created tasks where the students have higher than expected levels of choice and voice. It means that the teacher and the students have created an innovative and empowering space that connects the curriculum and what the students already know and care about, which means that the teacher also has to be excited about the curriculum. This certainly sounds like a classroom I'd want to be in, either as a student or a teacher. For those who are absorbed into the desire to create classrooms where students can be absorbed, I would offer Ellen Oliver Keene's guidance from her book, Engaging Children, Igniting a Drive for Deeper Learning, K-8. Keene writes, quote, "In committing to a classroom that supports deep engagement, we must be determined to lead students towards independence and agency," end quote. Her point is spot on and reminds us that the job of the teacher is to create a space for students to link what they care about to what they are learning about. When we confuse engagement narwhals for unicorns, we misguidedly feel responsible for motivating students to learn. This dynamic creates a paradigm where, as Keene shares, the students are, quote, dependent on an adult. You better wait for them to motivate you before you engage, end quote. I have never met anyone, especially a child, who does not have an intense passion for something. Thus, perhaps rather than thinking we need to create the passion, we need to think about how we can provide ways for students to link their passions to the learning in the classroom. Passion has many manifestations. It may be in relation to dinosaurs, dolls, dance, or the Dodgers. It can also be to an idea. In other words, while human beings are also passionate about while human beings are passionate about tangible things like people or places, they are also passionate about ideas like democracy, decency, discrimination, or dishonor. You could tap into their feelings like the feelings of duty or feeling about an event like disaster relief. When you allow people to connect to things they already care about, they're more likely to care about what you want them to connect to. While you may not be able to help someone who is passionate about dinosaurs find absorption in the French and Indian War, that does not mean that there are no other entry points for making connection. That same person may care a lot about colonization or North American conflicts or the plight of indigenous people. If we are only seeing absorption as an opportunity to connect to specific things like hobbies, we say things like, Bella likes soccer, but there's no way to link soccer to what we're learning about, and give up too easily on finding ways to engage students at the highest levels. On the other hand, if we broaden our entry points to feelings and ideas, we exponentially increase the possibilities for absorption.
I love it. I love it. Laura says, as a fellow English teacher, I love the Odyssey reference and To Kill a Mockingbird too. I thought it was interesting when you talk about people pleasers. And yes, love the word empower. I agree. Yeah, it's just we're coming closer to the end, and I just want to say it's all there. It's not like a panacea. It's not like a Band-Aid. Do this and it's going to work. It's about failure. It's about everything that we've been learning all through these years and putting it into practice and learning our students and hopefully and it coming down from admin to teacher, teacher to student. All that modeling is so important, and you put all of that in there. And that's why I just think that this is a great read. I think especially for pre-service teachers. Like seriously, if you have a pre-service teacher, here's a great gift to give them before they graduate. First, second year teachers as a mentor teacher. I just think this is a great book. I'm just curious, what has the impact? What is it? We've already seen some of the wonderful feedback tonight by people who've read it, which is so cool. Tell us a little bit about some of your feedback that you've heard and what's next. I know some things are in the works.
So I get really excited whenever anybody like not text me, whenever somebody tweets me about what they're reading. Laura has been doing lovely tweeting. I don't even know what to say when people do that type of thing for me, but it really makes my heart swell. As well, I was able to teach a course locally, and I got a lot of feedback in that way. I know that people are really tired right now. It's hard to run this pandemic marathon because we don't know where the finish line is. And so if you can't see the finish line and you feel like you've given everything and you feel depleted, you sometimes want to sit on the side and take a breath, and reading something can feel like it's more energy rather than energizing. I think, though, that people who read this book find it to be really energizing. A lot of the feedback I tend to get is, this is exactly what I thought, but I didn't know how to say it before. And so that's really, really kind and validating. And in terms of what's next, like I said, there was so much that I was working on in the manuscript for this book that I didn't exactly just keep swimming. Especially if you're a narwhal, that's the whole point.
That's good.
Yeah. So, but there was so much that I didn't, I had too much to go into one book. And so I reached out to EduMatch. If anybody out there has any desire to ever write a book, I strongly encourage you to reach out to EduMatch. As publishers, they are phenomenal. I cannot say enough about them.
We love them.
And that is why I went with them for publishing this book, because they publish books by educators for educators. And I was like, yes. So by any means, I'm sorry. So anyway, the next book, I have a sequel to this book. It's called The Big Book of Engagement Strategies, and it's just engagement strategies, again, organized in the same way, and about just as thick. And so that should be out in, in this late summer.
I love it. So it's just perfect. And I hope that it's just as big as this, because I feel like this is you can work through. I didn't have to squint. I have terrible vision. This was awesome. I absolutely love it. I want to say, Terry says, Laura, thank you so much. Laura, we feel your love coming through. You're an amazing, thank you for watching. Terry says, after I read this, it may become a required text for my pre-service teachers. Yes, Terry, amen. Yes, a sequel. We're all excited. I agree. Julia sending love. Andy saying your passion for these books is a true example of absorption. Yes. If you're talking to me, yes. You know what is so funny? My daughter, whenever I get these books, she's like, do all your friends send you books? And I'm like, well, maybe that's true. I don't know. So I'm so happy for you. Congratulations on this book and what's coming next. I can't wait to read your next book, because I thought this had a lot of strategies in it. So you're going to be focusing on even more. Before we go, how would you like people to follow you?
I would love them to follow me on Twitter. That is my main social media go-to. I do some stuff on LinkedIn too. You can find me on Instagram, but I'm not very active there. So Twitter is the way to do it. And then my website, I post a blog post 3 out of 4 weeks. And the last week in the month, I spotlight a post that might not have gotten much attention. And so, but that's really the best way. And again, everything that I'm, all the images in the book, if I have video references in the book or whatever, they're linked on the website for free. And so I hope that, people go there and subscribe and, give me some feedback. Let me know how I can grow.
Andy, I agree. She's not just the president. Yeah, I totally love that. And Heather, do you speak with groups? It would be great
I would love
yes!
to. Yes. Terry,
Yes,
just go to the contact me on my website.
Terry, are you friends with me on Facebook? I can get you. Yes. And this is your website.
Yes. Lion's Letters.
Go ahead.
lionsletters@outlook.com. That's the email.
Awesome. And Matthew says, I used to come to school board meetings to hear Heather talk live. Oh my gosh, I can understand why. You're so down to earth, and that's what I admire about great leaders. And even you had a leadership post. If I had that link, I would put it down. But you are an amazing leader. You haven't forgotten what it's like to be in the classroom. You honestly understand the restrictions. You're not like putting out fluff that nobody can do, but it just sounds good. You're not that person. Yeah, if you have the link, great. I will drop that if you want. But I just, yes. I'm Matthew, thank you for joining in. Everybody, thank you so much for joining in. It was great to hear all of this feedback tonight. Like, this has been very exciting. Terry says, I just subscribed to your site tonight.
Oh,
that's so cool.
I love it. So let's see. That's the link.
Okay, great. Oh, good. Thank you for finding that.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a wonderful post that she had that you wrote. Oh, Michael, thank you so much for joining in. Cheers to you also, sir. Thank you. And then if you want to see the EduMatch post, here is the link to it that I dropped in the comments. But thank you so much for letting us take, take part of your evening. I know you've had a busy day. Everybody who's watching, whether it was Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, thank you so much. We are so incredibly glad that you enjoyed this tonight. And next week, I'll be talking about something that is kind of related for PBL. So I hope you'll join in too. Are there any last words that you would like to share with us, Dr. Heather Lyon?
I think it's so cute that you call me Dr. Heather Lyon, just like that. Melanie, I just want to thank you. I want to use my last words just to thank you for all that you're doing to put this great work out there and give authors this platform to talk to you and learn from you. So thank you.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I get tickled just to read all of these books. I feel like I'm learning so much, but when I get an exciting book like this, like, it really excites me, and I feel like I have something to offer others as well as my own teaching practices. So it's been so exciting to talk with you tonight and see you face to face. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.